Good morning, East Texas. It's time to rise and shine with the sun. The Grant Saline Sun. Right here on VZTV. Grab your coffee and come join the fun.
Welcome back to another edition of the VZTV Morning Show, Daily Show, whatever you want to call it. It's another version of the Burt Show because here I am right here on camera. We've got a good interview coming today. We got Richard Garza II. I like throwing that second in there because it sounds dignified. And he is, as I like to call him, our local Aquaman, but he is the Region D board member. And, of course, one of the big topics that we've been having here recently has been our water. We all know, sort of like they say, God ain't making no more dirt. Well, water is what we've got on this planet, and you know, we as we expand in population and the human footprint, that resource becomes more and more precious. And so we always see Richard over at all these meetings speaking on behalf of the public and stuff like that. So we wanted to bring him in. But first, let me get into my little smoke signals because I really love that tune. You know, guys, I do a lot of conversating with a lot of different people, and they come from different perspectives. And, you know, every day I think I know it all, and then the next day I learn I didn't. And so I try to always learn with every conversation the ins and outs of the human psyche, the human footprint, the way that man processes things. And one thing that I've come to learn, you know, we're about to build an all sports channel, go forward with some sort of sports broadcast on this thing. We've got a book club that's coming up. I'm sort of fashioning off of Tales from the Crypt with my favorite librarian, Miss Brandy over in Grant Saline. We've got a simulated golf tour coming in. So literally we've got so many different projects that are coming along and coming in to benefit. And people ask me why you have so many irons in the fire. Well, the really big concerning thing that I have to tell people is, unfortunately, I go back to the ostrich with his head in the sand. But I'm not going to go and harp on that because if you've been watching the show, you know what I say. If your head's in the sand, what part's pointing up and vulnerable? So therefore, watch your ass and be careful with what your surroundings and who are ruling your life. So I'm going to always say that. But people ask me all the time, what role do I think that the media plays in today's society? And I get told all the time, everybody with a cell phone is a journalist and blah, 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 blah. Now, my one argument to debunk that one is this. You see the trash that's on Facebook and what your fellow man does with that camera. And if that is what you want to be your sole source of media, then we're doomed and damned from this point forward, and there ain't nothing old Burt Rex fight does is going to save our souls. I'm just going to tell you right now, if that's the way you approach life, then you might as well start bending over and kissing your head goodbye because you're done. Now, I told people that the role of the journalist is about like that pin in the hinge of the doorway on your house. You can have the government on one side and you have the people on the other. Now, in my opinion, I believe that the people are the house. And I believe the government is that little piece of wood that closes that gap. It is a necessary object to keep burglars out and to keep your safety on the inside. It is the smallest piece of wood inside the house, mine, chalks and borders, but I'm talking about it in the grand scheme of things. The door is only as good as the person that puts their hand on the knob. If you choose not to lock your door, if you put a screen door there, if you put an iron door there, it depends on how important you take your civil liberties. Right now, we have a whole lot of people that either want to bolt that door and give government all the say, or they want to put a screen door there and have no government at all. Now, you know just as well as I do that both sides are impractical. We have wood doors for a reason. The journalist is the pin inside of that little hinge that goes like this right here, that door, the government's job operates, the media here, so that job is kept in its little route and it's in path, so it locks and unlocks. And the rest of the house is us, the people. That's saying we are responsible for our own security. We need to quit giving the government the house and us settling for the door. We need to stand strong and realize we are the roof. We are the rafters. We are the people. Our Constitution is our foundation. We give that door its credence. Now, if you want a big door, you put double doors in. If you want more light out of your doors, there's so many different options. But I'm telling you right now, when you put that door up there and you put a code lock on it, only the government's got it, and you can't get in and out of your house that you built because the government won't let you through that door, you're not going to like it. So start looking at that door as the government and quit looking at your house as your overseer. You are the house. We built this house. Americans, one sweat, blood, and tear at a time, one soldier on the ground at the time. We built this nation. We are the house. Quit looking at the government as your roof. Quit looking at your government as your refrigerator. Quit looking at your government as your front lawn or your back lawn. The government is that little piece of door that closes that little gap that allows interference, intruder, an enemy into your house. It serves its purpose. But by God, when a fire breaks out, you want to be able to bust through that door. If you've got a door there that's got a code lock on it and is fireproof, you're just might as well be sitting inside of a locked cage and burned to death. So there is a balance between security and freedom. And as my favorite saying is, you'll give up either one for the other, you don't deserve either. Now, let's talk some water. How you doing, Richard?
I'm good, and I want to thank you very much for having me on the show.
Well, and you and I, we've been in the same circles for years, but yet we've actually just started talking as of recently, as the Saline Creek thing, as I told you, really kicked off here about a year ago. And I think that opened up the eyes to the people about how vulnerable our water supply is. So for the people, the layperson out there, I tell everybody, I'm the useful idiot on this side. Explain to me, we see water falling from the sky. We drive across Lake Holbrook, Lake Fork, everywhere you go out of East Texas, you're crossing water. So when we start talking about the vulnerability of our water sources, what are some of the vulnerabilities as a Region D board member that you see we face in our water supplies?
Bart, as far as vulnerabilities go, there's two in the state of Texas. Basically, there's two.
Pull your mic up a little bit closer to you there.
There we go. Can you hear me a little?
There you go.
There we go. All right. Well, basically, you've got surface water and you've got groundwater. One of the vulnerabilities as far as, surface water is that you've got to get access to it. Where is it at geographically? And, of course, you can always have pollutants and things like that. But it's also really and truly, it's owned by the state of Texas. So right. If you have got a water right basically issued to you by the state, then you've secured a part of that surface water. If you don't, it's not available to you. That's just the way it works as far as, how we govern surface water. But now on the groundwater side, one of the vulnerabilities is, do you have it underneath your feet? So with the rule of capture enshrined in the Constitution, if you own the property, you own the water under it. Now, that doesn't always work with minerals and oil and gas and such, but with water, it does. It's enshrined in the Constitution, rule of capture. You own the real estate, you own the water underneath your feet. But one of the things is there any water under your feet? So, state of Texas, 254 counties, there's parts of this state don't really have any groundwater. So that's a vulnerability in terms of supply and access. If it isn't there, it isn't there. The other thing is that, let's say, you've got that right to the water that's underneath your feet. So does your neighbor. Well, we can't control who does or who doesn't own the properties around us. And because of the rule of capture, without what we call a groundwater conservation district, and there's a little bit of talk about that in Van Zandt County now, gaining steam, and in East Texas in general, but with a groundwater conservation district, tries to basically mitigate and offset some of the damage that, let's say, a neighbor could do to your water supply. So you drill a well, you pump, but it's going to your house. Well, you can't stop the neighbor, let's say, from putting in a well that's 10 times the capacity, 10 times the ability to pull out of that aquifer, and yet you share that water doesn't delineate who owns this property up here and who owns, the water doesn't stop flowing from underneath one set of feet.
Exactly.
To the other.
Even if you could put a boundary on it, the water flows, downhill.
That's correct. So there's no rule of separation there, and it doesn't delineate. So if they want us to start pulling more water than what the aquifer has the ability to produce, then your well goes dry. So vulnerability, there's one of the vulnerabilities, and that thus the talk here recently about groundwater conservation districts.
And let's go ahead, since it's already been brought up, let's go ahead and bring them all the way around full circle. What is a groundwater conservation district?
So I want to say I may be off on my dates, but fairly close to about 1951 or so, first groundwater conservation district was created by the state legislature. High Plains, I believe, in West Texas in the Panhandle. And a groundwater conservation district is the state of Texas's preferred method for basically governing and helping to moderate or mediate property owners and the groundwater that's underneath their feet. So a groundwater conservation district does not have the ability to prohibit you as a property owner from putting a well on your property and pulling water out of the ground that's underneath you. But it does have the ability to mediate and mitigate how much you pull and the impact that might have on surrounding properties.
And the concern isn't that, like, I've got a well here, my neighbor's got a well here. The concern is somebody in a corporate capacity coming in, dropping a straw down there, sucking it dry, and they'd probably find the lowest point down there so that they would be the last ones to suck the last drop out of the ground, you would think, or that would be the preferred location. So there's been some sort of talk about, like, I've heard everybody around us is sort of protected, but right here in Van Zandt County, there's an area that may not be permitted or is open to to this. Are you familiar with that?
So there's 98, I believe. There could be 99 now, but 98 GCDs in the state of Texas. But I serve on the Region D Water Planning Group, and so that covers 16 counties, Region D, Northeast Texas. None of the 16 counties that comprise the Northeast Texas Regional Water Planning Group, Region D, none of those have a groundwater conservation district protecting them or governing them, whichever way you want to look at it. There are some other areas in the state that do not have them, but from a geographic standpoint, from a population standpoint, we are one of the largest, if not the largest, area that is unprotected and has no regulatory authority, to mitigate someone or something from taking too much out of the aquifer.
Now, we recently had a workshop at the Commissioner's Court regarding this, and there were people that were voicing, one of them, Van Mayor Ernie Burns, and also a man from the Ag Credit
Farm Bureau.
Farm Bureau, yes. I knew I wasn't right when I said it. Crawford, is that? I know it's
Clayton.
Clayton, there you go. I knew it was C. But anyway, they were asking for clarification, and they were voicing some concerns that had to do with some of your rural guys because, water is a key resource to your agri community. Can you address some of the concerns that they were bringing up? So,
I myself have several concerns with the groundwater conservation. We've been served under the current framework for well over a century. That I know of, not to my knowledge, there's never been a problem in this county or in Northeast Texas with, access or someone abusing the aquifer or, infringing on their neighbor's right to pull and such. Now, in the history of the state, there's been some issues in the past and documented. But for the purposes of the ag community, one of their concerns is, for a century or more, we have been under this rule of capture system, and there's no regulatory body, no GCD in place. So, for instance, the dairies are able to pull as much water as they need. Row crop farmers, although row crop is not a big, part of the ag community, not in Vincent County anyway, but you would essentially be able to put in a well and irrigate those crops without any encumbrance from a GCD, from the government. And it served us well, and it could continue to serve us well. The problem is that if you created a GCD, there's rules in statute that essentially say, okay, if you have 10 acres or more, and it's an agricultural or, home, private home, on 10 acres or more, you are exempt from regulation. But there's some caveats to that. So you might have 10 or more acres, but if it's a row crop operation, or if it's a dairy operation, instead of a beef cattle operation, then depending on size of that operation, you start to have some regulatory authority come in.
Right.
And some oversight. If you're less than 10 acres, residents or private residents or even a small ag operation, I guess you could have some acreage, less than 10 acres, you can technically on paper be subject to the GCD's authority. Now, that being said, that often puts people back on their heels. It's true. Technically on paper, anything less than 10 acres can start to feel the pressure of a GCD if that GCD, depending on who's governing it and what the bylaws are of that GCD and what the legislature, when it drafts legislation that creates the GCD, has the ability to kind of rein in that group.
Right.
But short of that, yes, you can technically regulate, private wells on less than 10 acres. It has not happened in the history of the state, not to my knowledge.
Right.
We have not,
So there's never been nobody going full-blown HOA on nobody and,
Not to my knowledge, and there is one GCD, I believe, that puts, I'm trying to think of the word, it monitors private wells. We'll say that. So it can tell you how much that home is pulling, but it only does that so that it can document how much water is coming out of the aquifer. It doesn't actually use those to govern how much or to stop that homeowner, but it's just measuring. It's usually as a measure state. None of the other GCDs that I know of don't even do that on private homeowners.
And on one hand, you can see the need to do that, but on the other hand, it's like I'm getting a whole lot of where's the first place they're going to start regulating on that is, hey, I'm going to right now these numbers ain't used for the billing, but eventually, hey, we're going to classify this guy as this guy as this guy as this, and so I'm seeing where also concerns on both sides, but it's one of those almost a catch-22, because you really, which I'm sure they have probably a ton of ways to monitor our aquifer.
So one of the ways, and when you create a GCD, they're going to have to do what they call monitoring wells. So the state, the TWDB, which is Texas Water Development Board, already has throughout the state different wells drilled that they monitor the aquifer from. So you can kind of piggyback on those, but it's more than likely you're going to have to drill additional monitoring wells that can gauge how much that aquifer is going up and down throughout year to year. So that will be an expense or something that has to be done. But yes, the TWDV already currently monitors to a certain extent of the aquifer.
And explain what aquifer we're out of and the reach, because to understand where we get our water, a lot of people don't understand the scale of our aquifer.
That's true. So, the Carrizo Wilcox is what we pull from here in Vincent County anyway. And but now the western side of our county does not sit on top of the Carrizo. So when you get to the far right Kaufman County line, it's almost virtually impossible to get groundwater over on that side. But the delineating line's about 2/3 of the county sits on top of the Carrizo Wilcox, but we're on the outcrop. So that's a technical term, a geologic term. But basically the outcrop, that has to do with what the geology under the ground and how that water moves and transfers. But we're on the outcrop. If you go into Smith County, Wood County, they're in the subcrop. So one of the differences for the average person and viewer, if you're in the outcrop that typically is not the highest yielding or highest producing part of the aquifer. When you get into a subcrop, that's where you get wells that can really yield. But the aquifer, the Creosote, goes all the way up from like parts of Bowie County, and actually goes across the state line into Arkansas. But from our perspective, they're in Bowie County at Texarkana, and it kind of makes this overarching run all the way through northeast Texas. Most, not all, but most of the 16 counties that are in Region D sit on top of that aquifer, and the aquifer goes and runs all the way down to South Texas and to the Rio Grande Valley, a part of it.
And so we're talking a big target for any area of vulnerability. So in that aquifer, how many these groundwater districts do you say?
Oh, you'll catch me out there. So I don't know exactly how many individual GCDs run from here. Obviously, in Northeast Texas, we don't have one. So, but when to our south, there start to become GCDs that govern and regulate all the way down to the Rio Grande Valley. I don't know how many of them, but there is a significant amount of coverage of the aquifer to the south.
Because like, as I've always said, our Constitution's only as strong as our weakest Congress. Our chain's only as strong as the weakest link. If we could be all fortified here, but yet if other counties around us, the guys used to come in, exterminators come in and say, hey, I want to spray your yard for mosquitoes. And I'm like, but it's not stopping the guys from next door from flying in. Northeast Texas is becoming fortified. What about up in Arkansas and all that stuff? I mean, because if we're all sharing one aquifer, doesn't that make it a common interest?
It does. I mean, the aquifer's so vast. So I'm not a hydrologist. I'm not a geologist.
Right.
So that being said, I don't, see what's going on down in Austin necessarily has just this great impact on what's going on here in Van Zandt County.
Okay, good.
You got to get a little closer to home to have a huge, overwhelming impact. But that being said, yes, there needs to be comprehensive, coverage of an aquifer.
Well, that does, because I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, okay, we all got a bowl here and we all stick straws in it and we start drinking. Eventually, the bowl's going to run dry. But how does the aquifer replenish? So
there's a couple of different ways. Rainwater is one of those ways. Streams and rivers. So a stream or river, like the Sabine, helps to recharge the aquifer. Rainwater recharges it, but the subcrop and the outcrop kind of recharge in different ways because of the formation of the earth down there. So it takes a long time to filter that water and for that water to make its way down. But sure, so surface water, so like a lake, for instance, when a lake's sitting on top, there's a porosity to that soil, and it will work its way down into the aquifer. Same thing with rainwater.
Okay. And so as you've been in the process, how many years have you been on the Region D board?
5 years this September.
And what has been some of the things, the conversation, how's that evolved from when you first began on the board and like today? Has the urgency sort of grown, or has it sort of been, everybody been crying wolf all these years and, it's really not gotten any worse? It's sort of, has it gotten worse in?
I would say that as a board, when we meet, I don't know that we've ever talked about a groundwater conservation just in an official capacity, but some of us board members in private with one another have discussed it and can kind of sense the more of an urgency or a change in it. In particular, like in my case, I officially endorsed a GCD at the Commissioner's Court meeting. I can take now the opportunity and to feel a little more comfortable saying I support a GCD, but with some restrictions. So, but as far as the regional water planning group goes, we're there to kind of to help give the public a voice, the public a say in what WUGs. So another acronym thrown out there, WUGs, water user groups. So, municipalities, rural water supply corporations, they send us what they need or what they think they need, their plans. And it's our job to kind of give the public a voice and input. As far as groundwater goes, we don't have any regulatory or statutory authority to regulate, permit, or do anything. So it's never really been a focus of us, of the group per se as a whole or as a body to say, hey, let's start advocating. It's been board member by board member private discussions that we've started to kind of see a coalescing around the need for a GCD. The reason why I kind of parrot the idea that we need one, I've told someone else, I've told people publicly and privately, I don't really in my heart of hearts want a GCD. We've been served well, Bert, by the way we've done things for over a century, but it's come to my attention over the last 5 years in service on the board that in Region C, so for those that don't quite understand regional water planning, Region C is our neighbors and our Texans, fellow Texans to the west of us. So Kaufman County, all the way into the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, that falls in the Region C group, where we sit here in Region D from a planning perspective. And it's in Region C's documents, their water plan, the regional water plan, is not their top go-to priority and project, but they have put it in there that should the need arise for water, and as you know, you can tell from the last year and a half or so here in Region D, surface water is a touchy subject.
Oh, yeah.
It has a great impact. Us in East Texas have bore the brunt in some ways for Region C. They may not like me saying that, and I can understand.
Well, everybody around here has eyes, and we all know.
We enjoy the lakes here.
Yeah.
A lot of people love to fish.
And when that level drops, and you go over there, and the people there tell you, I mean, it's not like it's backroom secrets.
And so, we have a lot of reservoirs in here, most of which, we too benefit here in East Texas. To say we don't, some Region C, we do benefit. Municipalities draw on those aquifers here, but we weren't the ones that necessarily wanted them. And they've cost landowners their property and their livelihoods in some cases. But anyway, so Region C has it in their plans that because surface water is getting more difficult to obtain, if the need arises, they want the ability, and because state law, because we have no GCD and the rule of capture exists, they've looked at coming into, and it's documented, into Henderson County, Van Zandt County, and Wood County, and drilling high capacity wells in a well field and taking that water, bringing it up and piping it, is my understanding, to one of the nearest reservoirs. So if it's in Wood County, geographically, that'd be like Lake Fork. Van Zandt County, geographically, it'd probably be Lake Tawakoni. Henderson County is close to Cedar Creek or Palestine. And so pumping that water and piping it over to one of those reservoirs, and then that expands the firm yield, the capacity of the reservoir, and sending that water to Dallas-Fort Worth.
Right.
And so because of that, that's what's kind of got me, I won't say just overly concerned. I don't see alarm bells. I don't see, not to my knowledge, and that is to my knowledge, there's no action being taken to implement that strategy. But just because by virtue of the fact that it's already been thought of, it's documented, it's there, the need for a GCD or the need for some kind of change.
Something to bring us to the table.
Because, heaven forbid that action is taken by Region C or someone else. There's the situation with Kyle Bass in south of us. And because water is becoming such a hot topic, and there are parts of the state that suffer from a lack of it. And that's putting it mildly in some cases. But to protect Van Zandt County from exploitation, and that's to say that, one well or one well field is not going to take all of Van Zandt County's water. But heaven forbid you be the one next to that well field.
Exactly.
And so
in your utopia, what would you see as the perfect CAD laws and bylaws? What restrictions and guardrails would you put around it?
Okay. So, and that's a good thing. I should have, and I wish I had have spoken more freely and openly to the commissioners. Maybe they'll see your show.
Most of them watch and are regular guests, and we do appreciate them participating. I tell everybody, this is just Bert in front of a camera if we don't have guests like you and the commissioners coming on. So they do watch, they do listen, and I promise you they'll probably reach out to me.
So,
Hey, Joe Donaldson just commented he's watching from Mexico. Hey, Bubba, what's going on? All the way in Honduras, I think.
Oh, gosh, you got to reach there. So, one of the things I wish I would have told the commissioners, and here we go, is that there are provisions in Chapter 36 of the Texas Water Code that, and Chapter 36 of the Texas Water Code is strictly focused on the creation and the rules and the regulations of a groundwater conservation district. That's Chapter 36. And so in Chapter 36, a GCD, if it's created, and if that provision is not taken away, curtailed, it has the ability to use eminent domain. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but it does, for better or worse. So that provision, I would love to see that provision taken out. Not curtailed by the board that would govern and is charged with running the GCD. I would like in the legislation that's drafted, I would like that provision taken away. We don't need eminent domain authority for a GCD. Your job is to protect the aquifer.
And if you put it in the original writings of it, it has a lot more teeth than an amendment down the road.
That's correct.
So that's what I was thinking when I was bringing it up. That's why I said laws and bylaws, because if you put it in the mix, then it's there.
I'll tell you what, this is a good analogy, Bert, and you'll like this. So if you stop and think about the legislation, yes, there will be bylaws drafted by the group and by the board members, but think of the legislation as your constitution. Mm-hmm. Almost impossible to change the constitution. Yep. And it just outright states kind of, you're not going to do this and you're not going to do that.
It cements them guardrails in place. And so that's why I worded it the way I did, because we all know that moving forward, it's going to be molded and manipulated and all that stuff to fit all the molds and cracks and stuff like that.
Right.
But if you give it its base and say we cannot stray from here to here, then we know that it's going to be consistently in focus to where we need it to go.
That's right. You know that you'll be protected. So eminent domain, that's one of my concerns. The other one, we need to either consider increasing or, consider what exemptions ag has beyond the 10-acre rule. And that's what's nice about the legislation. So if you go the legislative route, there's going to be some proponents saying, no, we don't want to make changes, and I think the attorney that's helping draft is kind of hesitant to make too many changes because the legislature kind of frowns on it. Well, that's the job of the legislatures, obviously.
Fight your battle, baby. Fight your battle. Ain't nobody going to give it to you, so fight your battle.
That's correct. So if you're going to customize the legislation, remove that. Look at expanding the limits, not limitations, but expanding the exemptions, we'll say, for agriculture. The other one is there's a subsection in there. And I can see myself the minute I say this, Bert. I can see some people smiling on one side, and I can see alarm bells going off.
Like
on
I told
the
Miss Tracy Brantley yesterday, I say the Bert Show has a tendency to do that to people. We get, people say stuff, but hey, that's the conversation that needs to be had.
So I'll put it out there. There's a subsection in Chapter 36 that gives the GCD, I think this subsection is kind of, besides a number, it has like facilities and improvements, if you want to go read it. And the facilities improvements subsection, it gives the GCD the ability to construct a dam. And it gives the GCD the ability to remove or destroy a dam, amongst other facilities and improvements that it can do. And given what we've been through the last 18 plus months, some would say 15 years for some of those in the affected area that put up with this 15, 16 years, they're thinking, why on earth would you, as a Region D board member, given everything that we went through, why would you advocate for a GCD when you've spent all this time and energy, and all of us, landowners have been stressed, and for the city of Canton, they've been through it too. Why would you want to go through this exercise again? Well, I don't. And that's why if we get a GCD, it does not need eminent domain authority. It does not need the ability to construct a dam. Someone smarter than myself needs to tell me what the heck a dam has to do with protecting groundwater.
Right.
It's underneath their feet. If it's up here, it should be surface water. I'm sure.
And it's really funny that we circled right back to this. What did I say in my smoke signals? Let's make the doorway the regulatory and not make the regulatory the roof. We give them their rights. We give them their abilities. This is all us. This is not them against us. This is us. It's our message against their message, and we have to push back. Again, fight our fight. And when we give them eminent domain, when we give them damming abilities and other things like that, we're not giving them a doorway. We're giving them a ceiling.
And, you know, and the the likelihood, given the current climate, that board, if it was put in place, if we do in fact get a GCD, the likelihood that they would pursue a reservoir is highly unlikely. But the fact that they can.
Well, I tell everybody, everything is a Pandora's box. Every legislation, every liberty, everything that we give and everything that we restrict is a Pandora's box, because it goes, you know, it grows. Right now, you may like the guy at the helm of the ship, and then 4 years, 6 years, 10 years, 20 years from down the road, you may not like that feller's outlook, and you've just given him all the ability to sabotage what you've built. So, and of course, when I say sabotage, I'm talking about main concern, our personal, private, and property rights. That is our freedom. That's the base of our freedom. That's the base of our liberty, because even all the way back down to the fundamental development and growth of our vote, it all stapled down to home ownership, and that was always ingrained in the Constitution, that everybody had the right for life, liberty, and it was called pursuit of happiness. But at one point it said, and land, life, liberty, and land. That property, those resources that we have that are the staples of life, if we don't protect them, nobody else is going to be protecting them for you. You know, same thing. Your neighbor's going to fight for your neighbor. You should fight for your own house. And if you let other people fight for your house, you're not going to have a house for long. You know, so a district like this, if nothing else, again, it brings us to the table. We may not be able to stop what Austin or Dallas or any of them do, but when we have a collective out here that shows a force, that we can go sit at the table and say, hey, we need to be considered.
And, you know, and the GCD certainly gives you, you know, like I said, because of the rule of capture, and there's talk, you know, there's some are against touching the rule of capture. Some people are for modifying that. And, you know, someone asked me, is there any other mechanism, is there any other way that we could go about protecting ourselves, protecting our groundwater short of a GCD, which seems like government overreach, government oversight.
Right.
To my knowledge, you know, there's not. That has been the preferred method for protection of groundwater resources for, you know, at least since 1951, since the first GCD was created. I think by law, you know, it had predated 1951. So there's no other way that I know of. And if there is, you know, to the viewers,
right,
let me know.
And we got a smart bunch out there. We got a whole bunch of smart folk out there that come up with really good ideas. So, you know, if y'all got an idea, again, we are the house guys. This is our house we're building. So if you've got an idea of how to keep our faucets running water, reach out to someone like Richard. I've got a phone number that's blasted all over my broadcast. Y'all know where I'm at. Send me a text message or whatever, and I'll get it to these folks that might have not thought about it. It may just be as simple as a thought or a perception. You know, you may have dealt with water at one point in time and had to deal with something on a smaller scale. You had a well and figured it out yourself, and everybody says, man, you're a genius. You know, when you're sitting around drinking a beer with them, well, share your genius with the county. Let's put it on a bigger scale if you've got it, if it's really genius.
Yeah, that's what I say. I'm humble enough to say, you know, this is what I understand it to be. This is what I know. But come on, let's hear other ideas, and because if there's another way, if there's a better way where we don't have to have a GCD, I'm all for it. But so that's kind of the ethos of what's going on in terms of why I support a GCD, but I support it. The caveat is we've got to protect the citizens of Van Zandt County. And
like I said, I totally agree, because, you know, anytime someone walks in with an endless bank account and they try to fight a bunch of us that paycheck to paycheck, you know, it's an uphill battle. And we see it all day long with big corporate stores coming in, putting mom and pops out of business. But now, and when we talk about water, we're talking corporate can come in and literally put mom and pop out of business. And so we do need to think about it and put our concerns. And like I said, do you ever foresee, like right now, everything's are hypotheticals, and you know, there's nothing it's conversations in cigar rooms and over drinks. do you ever foresee us logically, or do you see a timeline down the road where you see it's going to be a major player in the conversation at hand?
Are we talking, Bert, specifically about a GCD?
I'm talking about water. Like if we don't do something today to protect it, let's say we just go Wild West here, nobody does the either way, at some point in time, water is going to become a major concern, GCD or not. We're going to get to a point. Where on the timeline are we at before we're at that point?
In my role as on the Region D board, we're just a planning group, and they'll be quick to tell you, TWDB will, and I should, that there's this is not an exact science. There's almost as an art as much as a science. So
exactly.
There's you could have a wide range of possibilities. We are expected here in Van Zandt County to become the third most populous county out of the 16 counties that currently make up the Northeast Texas Regional Water Planning Group, Region D. We are, I think, the fourth or fifth most populous. We are expected to be the third most populous county according to these projections. And the projections that we use are developed by TWDB and they use U.S. Census data. That's what we use those government entities to help create what we think the population predict. And there's always,
when you go from a set base of numbers and studies, it's restrictive. I mean, it's only a glimpse into what we could be seeing.
So we're expected to go from roughly 60-ish thousand currently to over 100,000, I think 109,000, if my memory serves me right, by 2080. So that doesn't sound like a lot, but it from where we're at now, that's a fairly large increase. I think 57% increase over that 50-year span. So that's going to strain our water resources. There's no doubt about it. Now, if we exceed that, obviously it becomes even more critical. If we don't quite hit those numbers, then we should be well prepared. The county doesn't want another reservoir. I say that I'm speaking for them. Over the last 18 months, I don't think anyone wants any more surface water than already exists. There's roughly, I think, and I might be wrong on this, Bert, I think roughly around 10,000 acre feet available to us that's not being used. Now, when you say 10,000 acre feet, you might go over to, like I said, the western part of the county, and you don't have any.
Right.
And then you come over here into Precinct 4, down toward Smith County, and you have quite a lot of that 10,000 acre feet actually sitting in one portion of the county or the other. That's true. But there should be a large amount of groundwater available if need be. In other words, if there's estimated 10,000 acre feet to use. But I want to try and advocate. The SRA, which is Sabine River Authority, is kind of already over allocated resources. Right. But I want to encourage the municipalities, Edgewood and Wills Point have allocations from the SRA. They are solely on surface water, have no groundwater to speak of.
Right.
Canton has a mix of both. We need to try to get on the wait list, so that should and if some surface water becomes available, get on that list and then grab it when it becomes available, because I think we're going to need a mix of groundwater and surface water in this county. I think we're good enough. I don't see any cause for concern within the next 50 years, but being pragmatic about it doesn't hurt. And so the other thing I'm trying to advocate for, and I think the show is a good way to do it. I've said it, at a political club meeting before. I've said it in private. I've said it on another show, I think, and that is, Toledo Bend sits unused. When I mean unused, there's so much water goes through that dam every day for hydroelectric power generation, and it has to be adjudicated for that. Louisiana has half of that reservoir, and we can't touch it. The other half is available to us, and it's underutilized. I could be wrong on this, and I could stand to be corrected. but I'm going to throw out, because if memory serves me right, I think 2% of what's available is only being utilized out of Toledo Bend. So when you're talking about 2 million acre feet, 1 million acre feet roughly to Louisiana, and 1 million acre feet of water available per year on the Texas side, and you've got a resource that's been sitting there for over 50, 60 years, and it's underutilized. And so there's water in this state. We just have got to do a better job of moving it and getting it. Right. So there's, to the folks in Region I and to those that sacrificed all those years ago, my heart goes out to them. And they, any water they need, they should be taken care of. That's what we do. We try to do it on a regional by region basis, make sure that, you've got what you need. But there's so much water there that Region D could use and Region C could use.
Right.
And so as a planning group, that has been, and I don't want to speak for every member of the board, I want them to speak independently and freely, but there's no secret that we have been trying to advocate for the use of that resource and trying to bring it online. It's expensive to do, sure, but otherwise that water goes out every day into the Gulf.
Right.
And it's, so for the sacrifice that was made half a century or more ago, that needs to be put to use before we go trying to develop additional surface water supplies. But so for Van Zandt County, while that doesn't, there's no direct way to take advantage of that now. If we could get the state to move on that and develop, we do a good job of moving people in the state. If we could do as good a job as we do of moving people, if we could spend some money, and the state legislatures allocated the $20 billion, for better or worse, and there's people on both sides of that spectrum that feel it was wasteful. Some feel it was inadequate. No matter which way you come down on it, there's no doubt that we need money allocated for projects, and bringing that water would be one of them. Right. We bring that up here. There's so much water in 1 million acre feet that Van Zandt County would be more than taken care of. And where SRA is currently maxed out, and you're kind of on a wait list, waiting for holes to fill, that takes care of that, eliminates that wait list, and then you've got all this water here. But I think, from what I can tell, Van Zandt County's okay. We're not going to, our faucets aren't going to run dry. There's recently, and I want to mention this on the show, there's been a recent issue, I think, with Edgewood. It's been brought to my attention that, there's some water quality issues. I don't know what's going on there. So it shouldn't be about a water availability issue. Because they have an
I think that's a lot of infrastructure. Grand Saline fights a lot of that too. Every day there's a picture of water in not the most attractive condition, different shades of brown. Again, I tell everybody, I guess I'm blessed to live on 1803 because I drink water out of the tap out of this every single day. And my family doesn't. My family, they believe in bottled water is the only way to drink. And now me, I drink so much of it throughout the day that I fill up this cup. It never comes, if it does come out brown, then most of the time it's because there's been a break in the system, that they had to fix. And of course you're like, oh man, you let it run for a little bit, it finally purges and you get the good water. But there are people, I've got eyes, I see the water. But again, I think that's infrastructure. That's not the availability. What we're here talking about is what's under the ground and down the road. And what I'm hearing is don't fall for the over-exaggerated energy behind this, because we're nowhere near D-Day or nothing like that. And there are options out there, such as that one that you said, 2 million, that's not even being tapped right now, really. Yeah.
And like I said, that's not doing Van Zandt County any good. And if it doesn't ever come online, then we need, a plan B, plan C. That's true.
Right.
But at some point, that water's got to be put to use instead of going out into the Gulf. And so between the groundwater resources that we have in the county, and there are small pockets, and I'll say it because I'm not going to be called out, and I'm not holding back or any secrets. There will be individual pockets where there are shortfalls over the next 50 years. Most of those shortfalls are in rural water supply corporations.
Right.
And the recommended strategy is for that rural water supply, when and if they start to see that they're going to max out their capacity.
Annex and join
Right. Drill another well.
Yeah.
And that should increase their supply adequately enough to take care of the population increase. That being said, because there are going to be certain rural water supplies in certain areas of the county where it is harder to develop that groundwater, I would like to advocate for them. And I can't make any, all I am is I'm just up there to help be a sounding board and a voice and say, hey, we've got these concerns. That's what I want people to understand about Region D is that I can't make anybody in this county do anything. I can't stop them. All I can do is champion and cheerlead and say, hey, this looks good. It's got support. This doesn't.
And this is how I see things growing. And I may be totally off, target here. But as the population grows, cities annex. So that co-op that you're out there, they're struggling to keep the the pipe in the ground and stuff like that. Eventually, when let's say like you look at Tyler, as it grows out, Swan becomes Tyler. So now their water supply becomes Tyler water supply, and now you've got a government agency that can afford to go in there and drop a well down there a little bit further and stuff like that. So with the growth becomes the availability of tapping in and resources and stuff like that. So
I'm glad you mentioned it. I mean, that's a great segue actually, because in the event that the municipalities do annex, and that's getting slightly more difficult, the legislature is making it more difficult for them to expand. In other words, the property owners kind of have the final say, as to whether to join or not. It's getting a little more restrictive. But as the cities and municipalities do grow, and even if they were to stay much in the same configuration they are, if we could develop interconnects between the rural water supplies and the municipalities, should something happen inside the municipality, I realize that the rural water supplies, are limited in their resource, but in an emergency case, there might be some water that rural water supply could send to the city, and then vice versa, flip the script. If something goes down inside those rural water supplies out there, if there was an interconnect, yes, they're going to want it metered, and there's going to be so many issues about, the rural water supplies can't treat surface water. That's true. The cities have some ability to treat. Well, with that treatment capacity, if you create an interconnect, you put a meter right there so you know how much water's flowing which direction.
Exactly.
And you get all the regulatory approval for it. Building those interconnects is a great way in an emergency to help solve some of this problem, of you're only on surface water, you're only on, groundwater, and as the county grows, because I think,
and also I think could also solve a lot of the mine mentality. When you get a kid that doesn't want to share, you force the kid to share, so no longer is the mine. Now it's y'all's. And so maybe that takes, a little bit of stress off of everybody when it's all interconnected, because I'm sure you're not, I'm across the board, everybody have a pipe, just blah, 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 just like telephone lines, electrical lines, you can interconnect and they all touch somewhere.
Sure, and there's a lot of regulation to that, and there's going to be a lot of the rural water supplies are proud. They're proud to be independent. They're proud of the system they've built. But that's another thing. So in 2006, see, one thing's leading to another in this conversation. But in 2006 there was a study, 2006-07. The TWDB allocated additional funds to Northeast Texas, to Region D, specifically to focus on rural water supply corporations. Mm-hmm. And our county, the western half and the western and southwestern half of Region D, from a county perspective, has the highest number of independent rural water supply corporations. And 20 years ago now, it was thought of, hey, wells are getting more expensive to build. Groundwater's critical, and sometimes it's, depending on where you're geographically located, it's easier or harder to find the groundwater and develop it. So they were saying, okay, let's do a study. What are their resources? How many of them are there? Yada, yada, yada. And to see if we can't begin the process of laying the groundwork to consolidate. And I say that carefully because I can already.
I see your eye.
The rural water supplies are going to be proud. They're going to want to be independent, and I can understand that, and that's why I'm sensitive to that issue. But it's going to get to be, when you're dealing a $1.5 million well, it's hard for, a group of 500, 300, 1,000 to pay for that $1 million well. And so if you start the process of considering consolidation or integration, even if you'll just even consider that can help, mitigate some of that expense and or begin to lay the groundwork for trying to combine some of these, because the resources are going to get harder and harder to get and more expensive.
Yeah, and it's almost like how a graduate learns, how expensive life is, and then all of a sudden you start appreciating, hey, maybe being independent isn't so what it's cracked up to be. When you got expenses like a new well, not cheap, especially if your population grows. Now you got to start putting more pipe in the ground. Now you got to start servicing all these people that are out there and all these different avenues. When you start paying for it yourself, oh wow, this is a little bit out of our reach. Unfortunately, that's how growth sort of covers and takes it in. And I can see why you're like somebody that developed a water supply, very proud of a system they built. And then let's say Canton comes in and says, we're going to take Corinth in. Your system's not up to what we need. We need your system to be able to handle this, and you're not in that shape right now. Before we think about doing this, we need you to do this. Is that a concern of the co-ops that if somebody tries to come in, they're going to be like, well, no longer do you have your independent say over your co-op because we're holding hands over here on the east side of the district?
I don't know if it's a specific issue of, one supply has got, this kind of infrastructure. And I'm sure if we started the process of that, we would get into some of the regulation that applies to rural water supply, regulation that applies to a city. And when integrating that, what's going to apply here and there to send that. I'm sure there's some of that would have to be uncovered. But I think it's more about the independence, meaning, so, you've got a rural water supply that's got a $25, a month bill versus, a municipality where it's, 80 to 100 plus a month. But now, of course, there's other city services tied into that water bill. But the fact that you've got such a cheap water bill, well, does this rural water supply want to basically consolidate and join another, and up goes the bill that everybody, and they're member-owned, it's a cooperative.
Well, and
so
they're a smaller system. Okay, let's put Grants Lane out there because that's where I live. I see all the Facebook posts of the water colorations and stuff like that. And to the credit of the council over there, they're addressing the complaints about the water. But let's say Corinth Water Company or Colfax out here, they don't want to tie on a Grants Lane. Okay, we got a small, intimate little grid here. We can maintain it and make sure our quality of water. I mean, it's easy to keep an efficiency efficiency apartment clean than it is a 20-room mansion with 14 bathrooms and stuff like that. It takes a little bit more effort. Hey, we see the Facebook post. Y'all got dirty water over there. We don't want to be holding hands with y'all because, I mean, if it comes in this way and goes both ways, we're bringing in your water quality into our water quality. We fight our water quality. We all know TCEQ is really strict about their testings and stuff like that. I spent a little bit of time over at Grants Lane working for the Public Works Department, so I knew, of course, always the people gripe about it, so they'll do it and they'll pop in an inspection and they'll do tests and stuff like that. What kind of hurdles would that be for, as you said, integration?
Now your knowledge is going to exceed my own in terms of having to deal with TCQ directly and the impacts on one system to another. So I can't speak to what exactly would have to unfold and what all it would require to integrate those two systems. But you do bring a valid point to that. One downside of integration is that now you have two systems,
shared quality,
with impacts on water quality going one direction or another. And it may be that it's best to maintain that independence, but just develop an interconnect for emergency purposes. But either way, there was that study done about the need for even the rules to consolidate to make bigger rural water supply corporations,
right?
And thus gain some efficiency and some scale. But the county's not expected to be in this just dire you know, I don't want to paint a dystopian picture that we're going to be out of water
Exactly. And
today,
that's why
tomorrow.
that's why I was I wanted you to tell everybody we're not at D-Day. You know, it's not like tomorrow you're going to wake up and dust come out of your faucets. This is something, and there's also options down the road, because a lot of times bad policy gets made out of haste. And I don't want to see haste in this conversation. I'd rather have a well-addressed approach, and conversations like this. I didn't understand all the ins and outs of that legislation, what you're talking about. But I do know, like I said, I've worked for the Public Works Department. TCEQ comes in, they run in there, they do their tests and stuff like that. Yeah. Well, when you have a larger grid, now you have a larger sample, and it's shared quality. So there's a lot of things to consider. And as we said, Pandora's box opens up of all these different fingers and entities and opinions that come in. Do you see any area that we haven't really touched upon that you'd like to elaborate? Because again, we're all about the information. Now that you've done this, everybody loves the show. They love to come back on. I'm sure you'll be back on as we have other meetings and stuff like that, especially you being a board member. This is going to be a real-time updates as we move forward on this conversation. But as we sit today, is there something or maybe something else you want the commissioners or the county judge to hear?
No, I think, what I've been able to cover with you has been a fairly comprehensive look at the situation as it currently sits, and some things to start for the citizens to start thinking about as we go in the years and decades ahead. But, on the issue of the GCD, I want to say, if there's a better way, let's hear it. I can appreciate their and I realize who's reached out to who. I kind of got an idea of who's started this process and what have you. And I know there's going to be some tension as we go through it, and there needs to be a healthy amount of discussion. And I'll say this on the issue of the GCD, those issues are critical to whether I think, and there's the issue of so we'll finish up with this, I think, on the GCD, because I think that's the most pressing thing that's got our attention now and is very important in the weeks and months ahead. And that is, if there's a better way, let's hear it. If not, and the commissioners want to pursue it, there's the talk of the fee structure, and there's some talk that a fee structure is not going to be, one, it's not fair. There's the fairness issue, and then there's the issue of will the fees adequately pay for the expenses of the district? That's kind of a touchy and iffy subject. We need to look at other GCDs, what their expenses are, and kind of fee structure. That's another reason, one of several reasons why I think if the district's as large as it is, and that's one benefit of a large district is that you'll pull the resources of 16 counties. So there should be enough money coming there. The other downside is that, from a democratic perspective, there's less direct input than like one man, one vote.
A larger brain trust.
But the issues of eminent domain, the issues of the facilities and improvements and what's in that subsection, and property rights and how we fund it versus, property tax, which is, I can agree. No one likes it. No one wants it. So it's probably going to be more the fee structure. Can the fees adequately cover the expenses? But the commissioners, I want them to be very thoughtful and careful that we address those concerns adequately. If those concerns in the context of 16 different counties cannot be addressed in that legislation, then, we probably don't need a GCD.
Right.
And I'll go ahead and say that. And I've said to some people privately and publicly, my stance now is let's get a GCD. But if you can't ensure the protections both of the groundwater and individual liberty, then we don't need a GCD.
That has to be carved out. And I will say this, and you're pointing out eminent domain being one of the big ones that you're saying that right does not need to be with the GCD. No. And so I will say this, when we were talking before to some of you viewers out there, he says this talking water is not the most interesting topic out there to do. but it is crucial. Anybody that's ever gotten thirsty in your life knows how important that it is. So we appreciate you coming on and helping clear up the mud a little bit, per se, pun intended. But again, this is something that's going to be a concern as we move forward, and so we'll have you back on that. You can reach out to, is there some place people can reach out to you if they have questions or concerns?
So the Northeast Texas Municipal Water, Northeast Texas Regional Water Planning Group, Region D, Riverbend Water Resources, if you Google that, that's our administrator. And so you can reach out to them, and I'm careful to say that, and then them get bombarded and say, Richard, what did you go do? But they are administrators, so you can send them questions and concerns. There are folks out there that have got my email address, and I'm careful not to give it out too broadly and too much. But
I'll do this. Corbin, do we have my email address up on anywhere? Okay, we took that. BurtFight@yahoo.com. That's my easy one. Just hit me up at BurtFight@yahoo.com. Put in the subject line, water concerns, message to Aquaman, whatever you want to. That's what we had his tag down there originally until we put the professional one up. I put Aquaman. But send me the message. I'll send it over to him. And I do not mind. I tell everybody, I facilitate the conversation. I don't mind doing that through an email string or anything like that. So
that's what's bad about serving on this board.
Right.
One of the things is that we do not have a dedicated phone. We do not have dedicated secretaries or any other than our administrator that
Right.
we retain the services of. So everything has got to be either directly to us. And Lord, if you
now is this board just for clarification, is it elected or is it appointed?
it is a you are nominated, and then the board takes a vote. On those nominations. So you're nominated, and anyone in the county is, that's, I guess, pretty much healthy and got a pulse.
Willing to sit up there for long meetings and all that stuff. Because, he makes it look glamorous, just like, Axl Rose on stage. But, it's a lot of, reading stuff and, a lot of black and white lettering and a lot of studies. And we appreciate you taking it serious because, literally, you can go longer without food than when you can without water. And that's what very few people understand. They'll go through the day, oh man, I'm so starving. And they wouldn't know real hunger if it bit them in the butt. But you will realize if you go a day without water, that's a total different situation. I know your little fat butt sitting there telling you, no, I can't. You could survive 24 hours without food. But go 24 hours without a drink of water and get back to me. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me,
and like I said, we'll definitely have you back on again. What were you about to say, Corbin? Yeah, that's what we're about to do. We're about to roll into the people that make this happen, Captain. The people that pay the bills. First and foremost, he always likes to throw me off. One time he'll go from front to back, and then he'll go back to front. And I say, and we got Milanos, and he'll be Romas. And he got Romas. I told you he was going to do it. He throws up the best Italian food you're going to wrap your mouth around in Grand Saline, Texas. Y'all go have that Roma's Italian restaurant. Good grub. It's right there on the east end of town, and right there's their lunch specials, guys. And like I said, I've not heard one person come out of Roma's and gripe about being there. So y'all go get y'all some food. It is going to be a good lunch. If you got your date, take them there. I do not advocate taking your girlfriend there if you got a wife sitting at home, but if you're going to do it anyway, you might as well take it to one of these people that support VZTV, and shame on you if you did that. All right, Milanos, there you go. All you can eat buffet for lunch. If you want to run, grab and go. And they ask you what kind of pizza you want to put on the buffet. So I don't understand why people walk in there and order a pizza. Go up there and throw it on the buffet. But hey, they got any kind of pizza that you can like. Go see them. All you can eat buffet. Call it to go orders 903-962-6060. They got chicken and the family special, one large, 3 topping, and one large specialty, $31.99. That will feed the family, my friends. Our favorite from Milano's is the chicken Alfredo with jalapenos. Tracks, they did send me their lunch special. I didn't get it up today, but it's only Tuesday. They open up tomorrow, so we'll have the lunch special up for them tomorrow. Right there is their special. Guys, if you're going into Grand Saline, right as you cross the tracks coming from Van, look over to your right and start looking for a parking spot because that's where you're going to get the best scratch cooking in Van Zant County. Go in there, take a look at their knickknacks, and if you're first in line when the train goes by, you get a free scoop of ice cream. So we call that a toot and a scoop with my buddy Jamie Sherman. So y'all be sure to go check them out. Best place to eat in town. You're not eating out, you're eating over at somebody's house. Speaking of my boy Jamie Sherman, there he is, top of the Sherman Floor Care. Get 20% off of your air ducts, your dryer vents, your upholstery, carpet cleaning, your pet treatment, rugs, tile, and grout. If you keep them busy, they like to keep Corbin over there busy, and I don't have to pay him so much. So y'all be sure to call up old Jamie or Kim and say, hey, we want 20% off because we watch VZTV. 214-434-8012. Give them a call today. Also, we got VZ Equipment Rental. Go see Julio at the intersection of 64 and 17. If your brakes go out coming down 17, you're going to run right into their front door. Go over there, tell Julio that you want some equipment, get 15% off if you tell him you saw it on VZTV. Hey, they are located in Sweet D, but if you call Julio Sweet D, he might give you a little better deal. You also got the $7 big meal deal at Sonic, and I'm telling you right now, if you eat all that food, you're going to want a nap. Go by the Grand Saline Sonic, the Edgewood Sonic, tell them you saw it on VZTV. Get full and enjoy your nap. Also, the Dairy Bar. There you go, Taco Tuesday, baby. And I'm telling you right now, Dairy Bar is, that's our hometown hangout. Like, it's been around since I was a kid. When you walk in there, you step back in time. The food tastes just as good as it did when I was a kid. So y'all go check them out. Tell them you saw it on VZTV. Enjoy you some Taco Tuesday. Also, the VZTV STL, the Simulated Touring League, that's going to be held over at Eagles Nest Golf Lounge, and it's going to be the first season is going to be coaches versus players of Grand Saline. It's Coach Haas, Coach Chastain versus a handful of their players. That's coming at us in September. If you are the best in business, you better get out there and get on the roster. $3,000 in cash prizes, $1,500 to the first, $1,000 to second, $500 to third. The battle of the businesses is going to start at the number of 64. Then we're going to go down to 16, all the way down to 4. If you're the best in business, you could be an owner, or if you don't play golf as an owner and you got a good stick on the payroll, send them out here, sign them up. Get your chunk of the prize money, be labeled best in business, and you get to come back next battle of the business seasons, and it's a King of the Hill style deal. So if you're on there forever, you'll never pay another entry fee again. Also, the VZTV Blitz Zone. Just think about Friday Night Lights, but you can keep up with everybody on one app. That's what we're going to be doing right here on VZTV. We're going to be following all area football games. We're going to keep you updated with yardage stats, player info, game scores, everything out there, baby. Y'all just be sure and find us on Friday Night Lights here on the VZTV Blitz Zone. Also, coming up tomorrow, we got Texas Style Wrestling's wrestlers Bam Bam Malone and Evelyn Carter going to be on the show discussing their upcoming August 29th show. I believe that's going to be in Forney, but I don't want to get it wrong because I don't want them to body slam me for being inaccurate on their information. But y'all be here tomorrow night at 6:30, so there won't be no morning show tomorrow. There will only be an evening show tomorrow night at 6:30. So y'all tune into the Burt Show, and let's get a little rowdy. I imagine with a name like Bam Bam, I imagine that's going to be a creative character. So we're going to see what Bam Bam brings to the mat. Also, Thursday, this man right here, we've talked on the game foul conversation since little recent happenings here in Van Zandt County. Well, good news, folks. My show has been seen in New York. I mean, I got a call yesterday from a guy from New York. He was arrested. He's a game foul breeder, and he says he's never fought a chicken a day in his life. But he spent time in a federal penitentiary because he was convicted of it. He's been out. He's an author of 2 books. And Tommy Carano. And I tell you what, I tell everybody, my wife is from New York. Her whole family's from New York. I talked to the guy for about 2 hours yesterday. I felt like I was talking to one of their family members up there. But this is right here. We proved to have both sides of the conversation. We had Miss Babosky on the other day, and she was giving us the inside of the legalities and all that stuff that went on to that side of it. Ever since that show, I've had people from down around Houston call me. Tommy called me from New York. And so guess what? We're going to hear the other side of the story. As old Paul Harvey used to say, the rest of the story. So we're going to get the rest of the story from Tommy come Thursday. And we appreciate him having the the guts to come on, because you know what? It is not easy to come on and stick your neck out there and ask for the abuse. And anybody that comes on this show, and I'm going to tell you right now, guys, I've gotten word that people been getting negative comments from them because they come on my show and stuff like that. I'm going to tell you right now, directed all at me. I'm your Huckleberry. Y'all bring it at me. Don't take it to them. I asked them to come on this show. I'm the one that you need to bring it at. Come at me. Don't be going after nobody's been on the show. Come after me. I'm Bert. I'm a big boy. I'm dadgum easy to find. So come find me. We'll handle it, brother. And intimidation don't work on me. So you out there trying to intimidate folks that come on my show or have something to do with my show because you don't like their view, bring it at me, baby. Because guess what? I don't care. Ask my family. I'm sort of crazy. Or maybe I'm not. Or maybe I'm just crazy enough to think I'm not crazy. I don't know. Come after me. I don't give a rat's butt. But you leave my guest alone. Because I will step up and call your ass out in 4K, baby. So do me a favor. I like pissing people off. Do something I don't like against a guest of mine, and I will piss you off. I promise you that, baby. So stop it. Did we have any more call-outs, Bubba? Okay. I hope everybody had a pleasant day. That was fun. Thank you, Richard, for being on my show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
And to everybody out there trying to intimidate somebody on my show or had a part to do on my show, I'm going to close with this. Don't be a beep it, son. Bitch. All right. Thank y'all.